Hi, I'm Andy Miocha and you're watching AnewZ. Here are the headlines. Donald Trump imposes sanctions on the International Criminal Court over investigations of Israel. Court vows to continue its work. Germany gears up for early elections. Polls have the conservatives in the lead, followed by the far right. UN climate chief calls for countries to stay committed to climate goals after US exits Paris Agreement. Thank you for tuning in. US President Donald Trump is sanctioning the International Criminal Court, accusing it of, quote, illegitimate actions after the ICC issued an arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu over alleged war crimes in Gaza. The sanctions place financial and visa restrictions on individuals and their families who assist in ICC investigations of American citizens or allies.
U.S. President Donald Trump has imposed sanctions on the International Criminal Court. He's targeting people who work on ICC investigations of U.S. citizens or U.S. allies. The move coincides with a recent visit to Washington by Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He, along with his former defense minister and 3 leaders of Hamas, are wanted by the ICC over the war in the Gaza Strip.
The decision to issue an arrest warrant against me, the democratically elected Prime Minister of the State of Israel, and our former defense minister, was made by a rogue prosecutor who's trying to extricate himself from sexual harassment charges, and by biased judges who are motivated by anti-Semitic sentiments.
As well as Prime Minister Netanyahu, Russian President Vladimir Putin has also been issued with an arrest warrant. But how likely will they be arrested?
The truth is that only with a change of government, and a pretty radical change of government in both those states, would you get into a situation where Netanyahu or Putin was arrested and surrendered to the ICC. But these things do happen. A week can be a long time in politics, and one can go from being a respected statesperson to being a war criminal.
The 125-member ICC is a permanent court that can prosecute individuals for war crimes, crimes against humanity, genocide, and the crime of aggression against the territory of member states or by their nationals. The United States, China, Russia, and Israel are not members.
The International Criminal Court has vowed to continue its judicial work after Donald Trump signed an order to impose sanctions on its staff. The ICC said it stands firmly by its personnel and that the order seeks to harm its independent and impartial work. The court urged its 125 member states to stand united in support of justice. Shelters and churches in Canada near the border with the U.S. are preparing for a possible influx of people deported from their southern neighbor under Donald Trump's new immigration rules.
Community churches and shelters are preparing for a likely influx of people crossing the border. This comes after the U.S. President Donald Trump's recent crackdown on immigrants. Canadian authorities also plan to strengthen their frontier with the U.S. by establishing a processing center. In Vaughan, a city near Toronto, a community church has opened its doors to migrants.
Took the seats out of the buses.
People slept on the buses?
Yes, we took the seats out. We went to the store. We bought air beds, blankets. People were out sleeping on the floor, so they had pneumonia and all type of cardiac issues. Regardless of your title, everyone should be a good Samaritan. So we just took the human approach and just decided to help them.
Some believe people will continue to take risks to cross borders no matter what laws are passed.
I think people are going to attempt to do it and they're going to get hurt in the process, and that's my fear, that people may just get really scared about the raids in the United States and they just want to cross illegally into Canada.
Someone is looking for life where I can get peace. If there's peace, someone can stay. If there's no peace, someone cannot stay.
With Trump signing numerous executive orders specifically targeted at immigration reforms and mass deportations underway, uncertainty continues to grow among migrant communities in the United States as they search for other options. Canada's previously experienced a similar surge of irregular border crosses in 2017, when Trump last took office. At that time, Canadian authorities installed more cameras and sensors at their borders.
U.S. Marines have installed barbed wire along the border wall near Tijuana, reinforcing security under Trump's immigration crackdown. A 30-member crew secured razor wire to defense facing Mexico. The Marines say they were working together with the Department of Homeland Security on installing barriers in an effort to decrease illegal border crossings. Meanwhile, Mexican National Guard troops set up vehicle checkpoints at the San Isidro crossing. The move comes after Trump postponed 25% tariffs in exchange for Mexico deploying 10,000 troops to the border. China has criticized the U.S. for smearing and sabotaging the Belt and Road Initiative in Panama through, quote, pressure and coercion. The statement came from the Foreign Ministry after Panama decided to leave the program. The ministry called Panama's decision regrettable. Panama has officially submitted a document to leave the Belt and Road Initiative, President José Raúl Mulino announced on Thursday. This came after his meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio earlier this month, though he denied the U.S. had pressured the decision.
China firmly opposes the United States' actions of smearing and sabotaging the Belt and Road Initiative through pressure and coercion, and deeply regrets that Panama will not renew the Memorandum of Understanding. In recent years, China and Panama have achieved fruitful results in cooperation under the framework of the Belt and Road Initiative, which has continuously benefited the people of both countries. We hope that Panama will make the right decision based on the overall situation of bilateral relations and the long-term interests of the two peoples, and eliminate external interference.
Iran's supreme leader said that negotiations with America are not intelligent, wise, or honorable after Donald Trump floated nuclear talks with Tehran. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei also suggested that there should be no negotiations with such a government, but stopped short of issuing a direct order not to engage with Washington. Khamenei also dismissed Trump's proposal to forcibly relocate Palestinians from Gaza to neighboring Arab countries. Thousands of USAID employees have been placed on leave as Donald Trump's team slashes the agency's workforce and cancels hundreds of grants and contracts. The White House says the move is part of a broader effort to cut waste and bring foreign aid spending in line with Trump's America First vision. For more on that, we go to Washington and our Ubay Shabander.
Thousands of employees of the U.S. Agency for International Development have been placed on administrative leave throughout the world as of Friday, per the orders of President Trump. USAID's workforce had more than 10,000 employees, more than 6,000 of whom were overseas. Trump is slashing the number of those jobs in that agency worldwide from over 10,000 down to 290, while canceling about 800 grants and contracts. President Trump has authorized Elon Musk, officially a special government employee, and his Department of Government Efficiency to identify federal agencies believed to be wasting taxpayer dollars. And they have set their sights on the multi-billion-dollar budget of USAID, which until today operated as an independent agency whose budget was appropriated by Congress. With trademark flair, President Trump made his view abundantly clear on where he stood on the issue, posting on social media this morning that, quote, USAID is driving the radical left crazy and there is nothing they can do about it because the way the money has been spent, so much of it through fraud. The corruption is at levels rarely seen before. Shut it down. That was a direct quote from the president. President Trump has also ordered a general freeze on foreign aid, with almost all of USAID's staff now having been placed on leave or fired. The White House says that it is determined to ensure that any U.S. agency involved in foreign policy is brought directly in line with President Trump's America First vision. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is now effectively in charge of the gutted agency, bringing it under the oversight of the U.S. State Department. The Trump administration has sought to make the case to the American public on why USAID had to be shut down. Officials have said that the administration has, quote, not even scratched the surface when it comes to identifying what are believed to be multiple cases of waste, fraud, and abuse within USAID, according to the Trump administration. A White House spokesperson said that USAID bureaucrats must be held to account. Some examples offered by the Trump administration on USAID expenditures reportedly include $1.5 million for advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, also known as DEI, in Serbia, $2 million for sex changes in Guatemala, $6 million for tourism in Egypt, $1 million to a reported Hamas-linked charity, $7.9 million to teach Sri Lankan journalists how to avoid, quote, binary gendered language, $2 million for sex changes and LGBT activism in Guatemala, and about $5 million to EcoHealth Alliance, one of the main non-governmental organizations that had reportedly funded bat virus research at the Wuhan lab, where many believe the COVID virus originated. Trump officials have reiterated that such programs do nothing to advance core American interests, and per those officials, believe that these programs are meant to just simply funnel millions of dollars that enrich NGOs and individuals with specific political agendas. I'm Ube Shabander here in Washington, D.C. for AnewZ.
Kyiv announced that it had received the first batch of French Mirage 2000 and Dutch-supplied F-16 fighter jets. The total number of aircraft that arrived was not disclosed. Although initially Ukraine had favored acquiring a larger number of US-made F-16s, the Mirage 2000s had been planned for delivery for years. The fighter planes will assist in defending Ukraine's airspace from Russian missile and aircraft attacks. Azerbaijan has sent another shipment of humanitarian aid to Ukraine, consisting of electrical equipment. The aid was dispatched from Sumgait Technologies Park, and the Azerbaijani Ministry of Energy says that $1 million was allocated for this purpose by the decree of the country's president, Ilham Aliyev.
Nearly 120 transformers and transformer substations, about 70 generators, and more than 3.3 million meters of wires and cables have been sent for the reconstruction of the damaged electricity supply in Ukraine and the creation of sustainable infrastructure.
Today is a very symbolic day because we have 33rd anniversary of establishment of the diplomatic relations between Ukraine and the Republic of Azerbaijan. So it's some very symbolic coincidence that this part of humanitarian aid, this aid really saves Ukrainian lives, Ukrainian people, and make sure our economy functioning.
Georgia's Prime Minister is visiting Kazakhstan, where he held talks with the country's president and Prime Minister. Focus was on strengthening trade and transportation ties. Our Fariza Kalimurzina brings more on that from Almaty.
The President of Kazakhstan held talks with the Prime Minister of Georgia in Astana. The two leaders paid special attention to increasing cargo traffic along the Trans-Caspian International Transport Road and modernizing the transit infrastructure of the corridor. After meeting with the President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, Irakli Kobakidze and his Kazakh counterpart Uljaz Biktenov held a personal meeting during which they discussed a range of issues, including economic cooperation. Both parties positively assessed the bilateral trade turnover, which increased by 25% in 2024 compared to the same period last year. Negotiations were also held in an expanded format with members of the governments of both countries in attendance. Irakli Kobahidze stated that Georgia welcomes the prospects of increasing the transportation of Kazakhstani energy resources, particularly oil and petroleum products, through Georgia's transport infrastructure in the Black Sea ports. He added that it's advisable to step up efforts to promote the development of the Middle Corridor and attract additional cargo. In turn, Kazakh Prime Minister Oljas Biktenov noted that by 2027, the volume of cargo transported along the Trans-Caspian International Transport Corridor will reach 10 million tons.
Transit and transport is the most important area of our cooperation. Both Kazakhstan and Georgia are vital links in major transcontinental transport corridors, offering efficient routes connecting Europe, China, and Southeast Asia. It is encouraging that our countries are actively working together to develop the Trans-Caspian International Transport Route.
Last year, the volume of shipments through the Trans-Caspian Corridor increased by 62%, reaching 4,500,000 tons. In general, Georgia and Kazakhstan established diplomatic relations in July 1992. The two countries cooperate in energy, transport, and agriculture, with Kazakhstan being one of Georgia's top 10 trading partners. From Almaty, Kazakhstan, Fariza Kalimurzina, AnewZ.
Pakistan's President Asif Ali Zardari met China's Xi Jinping in Beijing to discuss relations between the two countries, but also Afghanistan. For more on that, we go to Kabul and our Tamim Bahis.
Pakistan's President Asif Ali Zardari has met with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing. The two leaders discussed Afghanistan's integration into the international community and its sustainable development. In a joint statement, both countries urged Afghanistan's interim government to take decisive action against terrorist groups. Pakistan's Foreign Ministry emphasized that Islamabad and Beijing will maintain close communication and coordination on Afghanistan, aiming to play a constructive role in its stability and global reintegration. Meanwhile, Ali Amin Gandapur, the Chief Minister of Pakistani's region of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, has reiterated his plan to send a delegation to Afghanistan to address growing security concerns. However, he clarified that this will only happen after consultation with the federal government. Talks are expected to focus on border security, trade, and broader cooperation. This proposal follows a previous attempt by the provincial government that was rejected by Islamabad, which reaffirmed that foreign policy remains under federal jurisdiction. Tamim Bahis, AnewZ, Kabul.
Clashes between the M23 rebel group and government forces continue in eastern Congo. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called for an urgent intervention. Guterres said it's time for mediation, as the fighting that broke out in January in the city of Goma claimed at least 2,800 lives, according to UN estimates.
It's time for mediation. It's time to end this crisis. It's time to peace. The stakes are too high, and we need the active and constructive role of all players, namely neighboring countries, sub-regional organizations, the African Union, and the United Nations. Let us all act together for peace. Thank you.
As Germany gears up for snap elections on February 23rd, conservative CDU is leading the polls. One of the top issues of the campaign is migration, which has helped fuel the rise of the anti-immigrant far-right Alternative for Germany.
As Germany approaches the early parliamentary elections scheduled for February 23rd, important discussions are taking place, with potential for political instability after the elections being the central issue. Recent opinion polls show that the Christian Democratic Union maintains its lead with 31%, while the Alternative for Germany, AfD, is projected to secure around 21% of votes, coming in second. The Social Democratic Party, SPD, has 15%, the Greens have 14%, and 5% voiced their support for Left Party. Based on the polls, CDU leader Friedrich Merz is entering the election with promises to revitalize the economy. However, economists express doubts about Merz's ability to implement his economic policies due to Germany's competition with China and the current high energy prices. The German Economic Institute shares similar concerns, expressing pessimism about the economic outlook for 2025 due to rising costs and declining exports. Another issue related to the CDU's is Merz's statements about tightening migration policies. Experts view this move as an attempt to align more closely with AfD. Additionally, experts point out that American billionaire Elon Musk's interference in German politics and his open support for AfD could influence the elections. Specifically, Musk's open criticism of the German government is seen as an attempt to manipulate the election process. The decision for early elections was made after Prime Minister Olaf Scholz removed Finance Minister Christian Lindner from his position at the end of 2024, leading to the collapse of the coalition. In a vote of confidence held on December 16, 2024, the government lost the support of the parliament, triggering the early election process. Today, even Greens Chancellor candidate Habeck casts an early vote in Germany's general election.
Several thousand students have blocked traffic in central Athens in an anti-government protest against delays in an investigation into a 2023 rail disaster that claimed 57 lives.
Thousands of demonstrators in Greece have marched to the parliament building in the capital, Athens, to protest against delays in an investigation over a train crash in 2023. The accident that killed 57 people after two trains had a head-on collision is the country's worst railway disaster. Now, these protesters, mainly students, demand justice, claiming a lack of transparency from authorities.
We demand for justice to be served for the crime in Tempe, against the horrific cover-up that we have seen all these years, with the covering of the debris, with the editing of the audio evidence, where 30 people were literally burned alive by the explosion of flammable materials after the train collision. That is why we are back on the road, alongside the relatives of the victims.
What we say is that we will be on the streets until justice is served, until the situation in Greece changes, where every now and then we hear that new Tempe train crashes will happen, and so often we say, who is going to be next?
The two trains had been traveling toward each other on the same track for 19 minutes without triggering any alarms. Affected families have accused authorities of trying to cover up evidence, claiming that nearly half of the victims were killed by the fire that burned for more than an hour after the crash, rather than by the collision itself. Government officials said last year that a trial was expected to take place in June 2024, but the investigation is still in progress.
Staying in Greece, the country has declared a state of emergency for the island of Santorini. More than 11,000 residents and tourists have fled the island following the ongoing seismic activity in the southern Aegean Sea since the start of February.
The Greece's Ministry of Climate Crisis and Civil Protection announced that the state of emergency in Santorini will remain in place until March 3rd. Seismic activity continues in the sea area between Santorini and Amorgos, maintaining the same frequency as recent days. Several areas of Santorini have been cordoned off due to the risk of landslides. A team of engineers from Athens has arrived on the island to assess public buildings and schools. Army, fire service and police units have also been deployed to the island. Greece is one of Europe's most earthquake-prone countries, but seismologists have said the high level of activity is unprecedented and may last weeks or months. The experts say the tremors are unrelated to volcanic activity in the Aegean Sea, but are unable to say whether they could lead up to a more powerful earthquake. Santorini was formed in its current shape following one of the largest volcanic eruptions in history in around 1600 BC.
As the U.S. moves to leave the Paris Climate Agreement, the United Nations climate chief urged countries to strengthen their climate commitments and accelerate efforts toward clean energy.
The United Nations is urging countries to strengthen their climate plans despite the US's decision to withdraw from the Paris Agreement. In a speech in Brazil on Thursday, UN climate chief Simon Steele said that other countries are stepping up to lead the clean energy transition. He says there are opportunities for green investments to create jobs and reduce pollution.
A country may step back, but others are already stepping into their place to seize that opportunity and to reap the massive rewards: stronger economic growth, more jobs, less pollution and far lower health costs, and more secure and affordable energy.
Steele says the finance agreement at the last COP29 in November in Baku is the first hurdle, but says it's just the beginning and that work towards reducing pollution must continue.
The new global climate finance goal we agreed in Baku was an important step forward. It will clearly not initially meet every need, but $300 billion is a baseline, not an end line.
Steele says that not all the commitments have been met and calls upon leaders to focus on tangible results rather than speeches. At COP29, it was agreed to financially support countries hit hard by the impact of climate change by 2035. US President Donald Trump says the Paris Climate Agreement doesn't align with US values. He claims it unfairly redirects taxpayers' money to countries that don't need financial aid. He says the US should focus on its own success in balancing economic and environmental goals, serving as a model for other nations.
Streets of Colombia's capital were emptied of cars and motorbikes as Bogota marked its car-free day, an annual effort to reduce pollution and promote alternative transport. While locals welcomed the initiative, officials said they expect to see a drop in pollution levels.
The sound of car horns and traffic gave way to the hum of bicycles and pedestrians filling the streets. In Bogota, Colombia, private vehicles were banned for the day. Only public transport, emergency services and a few authorized vehicles allowed. Residents turned to bicycles, scooters and buses as the city promoted alternative transport.
This is excellent. The best thing that has been done in this country for a long time has been to have a day dedicated to the environment, to decontaminate a bit, to look at us, cyclists. I mean, for me, this is a success, a complete success. I always applaud that they do it. Hopefully it can be done more often.
Officials said the event aimed to cut air pollution, expecting a drop in harmful fine particles.
Today we are expecting reductions in fine particles 2.5, which are the one affecting human health the most. We are also expecting significant reductions in noise. We have a shocking figure: 89% of the city's noise comes from transportation sources, so on the car-free and motorbike-free day, we are hoping that the noise will be mitigated for the well-being of all citizens.
Noise pollution was also a focus, with authorities noting that nearly 90% of city noise comes from transport. Many residents welcomed the initiative. Cyclists and electric bike users called for more car-free days, saying it improves air quality in urban life.
Personally, so far it has worked really well. Let's say in terms of noise it has been great because it has improved a lot. Comfort for pedestrians, for cyclists, for those of us on scooters it works well. Honestly, I have liked it a lot. I see that it is an initiative that works for the city, that gives the city a break.
Some commuters highlighted the ease of movement and the quieter city. Authorities say the event supports long-term climate goals and sustainable mobility.
A river in Greater Buenos Aires has turned bright red, prompting concerns of a potential toxic spill. Authorities have collected water samples and are investigating the cause. Early reports suggest the substance may not be harmful.
Instead of blue, a river in the Greater Buenos Aires area in Argentina has turned a striking red. It sparked alarm among local residents who fear a toxic spill might be the cause. There are concerns about the potential environmental impact as the water flows into the Rio de la Plata, which runs alongside an ecological reserve. Authorities are collecting water samples with initial investigations focusing on potential contamination sources. There's speculation that the red hue could be the result of an aniline pollutant or chemical waste that could be discharged from a nearby industrial depot. Aniline is a chemical used in dye production. The Buenos Aires Environment Ministry, working alongside local municipal authorities, confirmed they were investigating. They say early reports suggest that the unknown substance may not pose an immediate threat to public health or the environment. However, the investigation continues as officials fully assess any potential risks.
In business news, Amazon experienced a decline in its stock after reporting weaker than expected growth in its cloud unit, despite surpassing revenue and profit expectations for the holiday shopping period.
Amazon shares fell 5% in after-hours trading Thursday after disappointing earnings. Amazon's cloud computing division reported a 19% growth rate, missing analyst estimates. Chief Executive Officer Andy Jassy attributed the shortfall partly to supply chain issues affecting computer chip availability. However, competitors Microsoft and Google have also posted weaker than expected cloud revenue, raising investor concerns about when the heavy investments in cloud and AI technology will start delivering significant returns. Much of Amazon's spending has been directed toward AI systems, but skepticism remains over the timeline for profitability. In an effort to boost confidence, the company showcased new AI models in December, aimed at attracting both business and consumer clients. Additionally, Amazon is expected to launch an AI-enhanced version of its Alexa voice assistant later this month, after multiple delays. Investor concerns were further compounded by Amazon's first-quarter revenue forecast, which fell short of expectations. The company projected revenue up to $155 billion, approximately $3 billion below the average analyst estimate.
That's all we have for you for now. Thank you for watching and do stay tuned to AnewZ.